iQOO has always tried to give us flagship alternatives that are well worth the price tag, and that continues with this, the iQOO 13. Now, just like last year, it comes out of the gate with a very strong processor, one of the strongest for the year, so safe to say that performance is the star of this phone. But I'd like to think that most of us, if not all of us, want a solid camera setup, whether you're looking at a flagship phone or not. So no surprises here, that's what I'm going to be looking at today. So the question now is whether these cameras are good enough to be called flagship as well, and if they can go a little bit beyond.
As always, we start with specs. The iQOO 13 comes with a triple 50 megapixel camera setup. We've got the main that offers optical image stabilization. Its telephoto camera comes with 2x optical zoom, which proves decent but will make you miss the 3x periscope lens found in last year's model. Recording capabilities are the same as last year. You can film up to 8K video at 30 frames per second, but toggling ultra stabilization will bring you back down to 1080p. Pro mode for video is also available. For selfies, the iQOO 13 gives you a 32 megapixel front-facing camera with up to 2x digital zoom.
Now, there is a lot on here, but if you've handled Vivo phones before, then this will feel kind of familiar since iQOO is a sub-brand, a sister brand of Vivo, and they do share characteristics in terms of OS and UI, and the camera is one of them. So I am going to open it up right now. I have a subject right here that we can use. So let's start with a basic photo mode. Now, I'm not going to go through everything, just some features that need explaining or things that I've been using for the time that I've had this phone. So let's just get started. So in the basic photo mode, you do have all the regular things that you would see in other photo modes. Up here, you have some controls, including Google Lens. Color profiles, you have 3 to choose from: vivid, textured, and natural. If you want to see some sample photos, I am going to take them right now. You also have super macro mode if you want to get up and close with your subject to get those textures that you don't normally see. But there is a normal, regular macro mode or a close-up mode that automatically toggles on if you get close enough to your subject. There's an icon here in the lower left. You can also turn it off if you don't like how it looks, but I'm fine with it. And it'll automatically toggle off by itself when you get further away from your subject like that. And then when you get back up close, it will automatically turn on again. Now, apart from that, we have our zoom toggles down here. You have your wide, your main, your telephoto, and your telephoto cropped. And they tell you the focal length as well, 50, 23, and stuff like that. And if you don't like the buttons, you can access the zoom wheel by swiping up from there. And then that's how I actually prefer the buttons, but I use this when I'm shooting video because it does look a little bit nicer, and I like the power zooming in and out. Up here in the settings, it is very Vivo. You have a bunch of features here that we've seen. Master Effects for me is turned on because I like being able there to adjust the colors just by swiping up and down, or the brightness like that. It's useful when you're shooting in a rush. Now, speaking of in a rush, one more thing that I want to show you before I move on to the next mode is the humanistic street snap mode. Yes, that is, I'm pretty sure, humanistic street snap mode. So there's a secret, it's not really secret, but there is a hidden street photography mode within photo mode, and all you gotta do is swipe up from down here to activate it. And I think this was meant to use as a landscape, and I really like the UI of this, just getting it out right now. It's meant to be used in landscape orientation because of how the buttons or how the parameters are set up. I actually prefer it to the photo mode because it feels like a mini photo mode with easier controls, because you do have your wheel here, settings on your left, and your wheel on your right. It's so easy to adjust, honestly. Even the bokeh is adjustable. You can't do that in pro mode. You can't adjust aperture. This one you can. And shutter speed, of course, EV. And there is even, oh wait, the color profiles are here, but I usually just keep it to natural because I usually process my photos. But moving on from that, there is even like a discrete mode. You're kind of a ninja shooter if you're doing street photography. You don't want people to notice you. You don't want to be posed. Or when you press the disc button right up there, it gives you this little secret viewfinder. This is a little basic viewfinder with a little screen on top that still shows you what you're shooting. But the only downside to this is that you cannot adjust your settings after. So this is really a street photography mode where you just go out and shoot without really thinking about, once you've set your settings according to the environment, the scenario, this is all you need and you just start shooting. There's another feature on here that's pretty uncommon. I don't see it a lot, or I haven't seen it in a while. There's hyperfocal distance for focusing in street photography mode. This is a way to get sharp photos without really tapping on your subject or focusing on your subject. The only downside of this is that you are going to have to use the set distance that the hyperfocal distance of this phone is giving you, which is which is 4.52 meters to infinity. So from that distance, you will be able to get a sharp photo. I haven't actually used this out in the wild. I will get to try it, but if you are a street photographer and you think these are useful features, or you already have sample photos, let us know, tag us. I'm very curious to see. By the way, you can also save your settings, so you can just really run and gun. It's really a run and gun shoot type of UI, and you can even change the type of flare that you want, but I always just keep, I don't know why it's on rotary, but I always just keep it on natural since I like things natural. You can even alter your shutter type. Just, you know, it's all aesthetic reason. There's no functionality to this. You can even add like text to your button. I don't know what for, but it's cute. I love it. I appreciate this UI so much. And it is useful in my life since I do like taking street snaps. I'm not a street photographer, but I like taking street snaps and I like using manual. And this is a combination of all that. So let's move on from that, and by swiping down, you get back to your basic photo mode. Now we're gonna go through the rest of the modes, starting with a snapshot all the way to the left. Now this is what you want to use when you're capturing movement or fast movement and you don't want any motion blur. This limits motion blur because it does automatically tell the camera to shoot in a high shutter speed. You also have access to live photo, which is always useful. It's kind of a safety net and is very useful in photographing pets. For example, in my life, I use it for photographing pets because you do get those frames before and after you take the shutter, and you can choose the frame that you want to keep. There's nothing more beyond that, so I'm going to move right on to night mode. Now, night mode again is pretty much the same, except for the fact that you have access to the night modes of other modes. Yes, I said modes too much, but that is what it is. What do I mean by that? So in night mode, apart from it being your regular night mode, you do have panorama night up here if you want to take a panoramic photo at night. And then you also have long exposure with the different settings already available here. If you want it to be automated, it's all there. You don't have to tinker with the settings. Also have super moon mode. I have samples of this. I really like super moon mode. And also astro, all within reach. You don't have to go all the way to the right where it usually lives, where all this usually lives. And I really appreciate that they're all just housed within here. So you have this as well. I'm not gonna go through that anymore. Now we're gonna move on to portrait mode. I'm not gonna stay too long here. There isn't much to explore. You do have night portrait, which is uncommon. Again, another uncommon thing because it's not only easy access. Night portrait is usually baked in. You don't really have to turn it off and on, but it's nice that it's there. But something worth mentioning about portrait mode, since this is a Vivo phone, you do get an extensive set of beautification features. You can alter your face, your skin tone, facial features, slim your nose, slim your lips, slim even your profile. There's a lot on here if you want to look, I don't know, Instagram perfect, TikTok perfect. Yeah, but you're already perfect. Yeah, okay, so let's move on. So after portrait, there's photo mode. We already went through this. In video, again, nothing unfamiliar. You can also toggle aperture. It's not great at that, but if you do need depth of field when shooting video, it is available. Not my thing. It's too artificial in my opinion. Filter stabilization up here limits you to 1080p at 60, but if not, you can shoot up to 8K 30 FPS, and then the same settings set here from the photo mode, except for the effects master. And I think that's about it for video. Nothing too extensive there. Last but definitely not least, we're gonna take a quick look at a pro mode, because the only thing I really want to show you guys here is that it has Pro mode for video, which isn't rare, but it is more uncommon. So it's nice to have. You have the same parameters for video as you do with photo. Now for photo, you can shoot both in RAW or JPEG, and when you shoot in RAW, it automatically shoots a JPEG as well, so that's convenient if you want to upload right away. Now for the rest of the modes, these are pretty common, no explanation needed, and like I said earlier, some of them you can even access through night mode. But one of the things that I do really love about this phone is its fisheye mode, and that's only because I love the look of fisheye, and I actually have a clip-on lens for my phones just to achieve that look. And I'm really happy that it's built in the iQOO 13. Now, admittedly, it's not the best fisheye around. It is very digital. It doesn't feel like a lens, and you can really sense the distortion. It takes some getting used to get a really good angle, a good fisheye. But fish eyes are meant to be fun, and I really like having it for nights out with friends or with family. It adds a little novelty, a little fun to your photos that you post the next day, or in my case, maybe a week after or a month after. I don't know. But basically, I think that's it. We've covered most of the things that I wanted to explain, and everything else will be in the rest of the video. And we're now gonna head on to some sample photos because I know that's what you guys want, and we're doing it right now.
We'll start with a real-world review because that's what matters to most. In bright light, the iQOO 13's triple 50-megapixel cameras make it a versatile shooter with different high-quality lenses to choose from. The main camera is my favorite to use as it produces consistently sharp and detailed photos. Images are crisp, colors pop. For example, in this photo, you can clearly see the details of Mr. Puff, from his fur to the brightness of his eyes. And for this one, don't you almost feel the moisture on these leaves? Dynamic range is also very commendable. I rarely encountered overblown skies even on very sunny days. And as someone who loves taking photos of clouds and buildings, its wide dynamic range is something I truly appreciate. The ultra-wide camera also performs very well. There's little detail loss and sharpness remains intact even at the edges. Colors stay consistent with the main camera. Mentioned earlier, one of the things that disappoints me is iQOO replacing the more versatile 3x periscope lens from last year with just a regular telephoto lens. It's not a bad shooter, you still get good details, some natural bokeh, and colors that are consistent with the main lens. However, its portrait mode falls short compared to other shooters like the Oppo Reno 12 or even the cheaper Honor 200 Pro. It's not as smart at cutting out the subject, and the background blur isn't as natural as others I've seen. The focusing distance for this lens is also fairly long, so you'll need some distance from your subject to capture sharp details. Moving on, the iQOO 13 also offers 4x zoom, but this is essentially just a crop of the 2x optical zoom. The key to getting good shots here is lighting and stability. Since this is a crop, those slight shakes may be more visible.
Shooting in low light was kind of tricky on this phone, or at least that was my experience.
Indoors, with limited light, photos tend to lose detail and vibrancy, resulting in somewhat lackluster shots. Facial details are also quick to muddy, and post-processing is also more evident. However, shooting outdoor at night yields much better low-light photos. It seems that the iQOO 13 processes low-light city street scenes much better than indoor scenes. With that, I find that the main camera is still your go-to, as it's the best for retaining detail and reducing noise as well.
Now, in terms of processing, this is probably something the iQOO 13 can improve on, because despite having such a powerful chip, there was more than one occasion that I would open up the gallery right after taking a photo to find that the photo was still processing.
Mentioned earlier, the iQOO 13 does offer a lot of shooting modes similar to Vivo. Some of these are pretty useful. I used supermoon mode, for example, to capture these shots of the full moon while in a moving car, and I'm pretty happy with the results.
I was also able to try out Astro mode, which is kind of fun. It's kind of cute because it maps out the constellations when you point your camera to the sky. I just don't know how accurate it is because I'm pretty sure my plant doesn't have a constellation.
For selfies, you do get an upgrade, but there's really nothing to rave about here either. The 32-megapixel camera snaps fine, but it's not the best considering this lens is on a lot of phones, and we've seen better performance from others. Finally, before wrapping up the photo side of things, let's take a quick look at the iQOO 13's Pro Mode. The iQOO 13's Pro Mode allows you to capture both RAW and JPEG at the same time, and you can tell they really are RAW images just by comparing them to the JPEG output. Now, RAW images from this phone are very saturated and retain a lot of the noise, especially when shooting above ISO 500. Pretty expected, and nevertheless, it was easy to reduce noise and grain during post-processing. The preserved info also gave me a lot more room to edit, which was great because I really love playing with colors.
Unlike other Pro modes I've used, you can actually utilize the digital zoom of this phone even in Pro mode, but the RAW file will still use the focal length of the base focal length of the camera or the lens that you were using as when you were shooting, and the JPEG will be the one that's zoomed in.
On the video side of things, the iQOO 13 doesn't output the sharpest, but it's got plenty of color, detail, and again, dynamic range. Stabilization is good on the main camera, even without ultra stabilization turned on. The ultra-wide does exhibit some loss in quality, especially in low light. This holds true for the 2x telephoto as well. The main camera will be the best in low light for video as well. Lens switching while recording, however, is almost unnoticeable, so you can freely zoom in and out without the image twitching. In general, the iQOO 13's cameras are good enough to be on a flagship device, but comparing it to last year's cameras and other models in this segment and price range, it's really not that exceptional, and the upgrades are barely felt. Doesn't negate the fact that it's got pretty solid hardware, but it's the software that's bugging it down. Hopefully this does improve with the help of updates. Now, the iQOO 13 may not be exceptional when it comes to cameras, but what it does offer is excellent performance no matter the task you're giving it. Obviously, with this flagship processor, all the tiny tasks like social media browsing are like a walk in the park. It also edits photos without a hitch and renders videos fast. Even editing 360 footage, which is kind of resource heavy, was a very pleasant experience. But if your aim is to game, the iQOO 13 will be very much up your alley. With a combination of the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, iQOO's supercomputing chip, a generous amount of RAM, and pretty effective cooling, you could probably game for hours without slowing down. It's built with a ton of features that support gaming, like Monster Mode, Super Resolution, and Super Frame Rate. It's also partnered with a large and gorgeous display, offering up to 144Hz refresh rate, and a whole bunch of eye care tech that both gamers and non-gamers will benefit from. Finally, it's got a massive battery that lasts pretty much the whole day and then some. It remains slim but also gets a durability upgrade. As for its design, it's pretty much the same from last year, which may be okay for some, but I wish it was just a little bit more interesting this time around.
Now, I came in knowing that the iQOO 13 really is a performance-first phone and not really a camera-centric phone. But if you do think about it as the whole package, it's a really great device. Which leads me to my one complaint, and I think it is a pretty big complaint that hopefully gets fixed or addressed down the line. Now, in using the iQOO 13, and I've used it for a couple of weeks now, there was one thing that kept happening that really annoyed me. It's that apps kept closing. I'm assuming that it has something to do with the processor and some compatibility issues, since it is a very fresh processor and there are even apps that I can't download yet. And this isn't an isolated incident on a single app. It would happen to all sorts of apps at random moments in time, and it wasn't even when the phone was heating or not even when I was using it for too long. I could not find the problem, why it would keep closing my app. And the thing is, sometimes you wouldn't even be able to open it right away after it closes. Sometimes I would have to clear the cache, clear the storage before it would start working properly again. Now, since this is a software thing, I am hoping that down the line they give us some kind of update that fixes this, because it's such a waste, because other than that, performance of this phone has been very, very good.
Again, if we're talking about cameras alone, the iQOO 13 isn't really pretending to be a photographer's dream. It's a people-pleaser kind of camera with little to nitpick if you use it casually. That being said, it's easy to conclude that the iQOO 13 is definitely a performance-first device with cameras that support it and are more than adequate for most users.
Given its target market, which are power users, gamers definitely, and maybe tech enthusiasts, then the iQOO 13 strikes a very good balance for those kinds of users. It's a performance powerhouse that doesn't overextend to the camera side of things, but delivers just enough to satisfy on almost all scenarios. For those who value speed and versatility, then the iQOO 13 delivers just that. It's an all-rounder that knows its place, knows its audience, and definitely plays to its strengths. Just get that software update and there's little to complain about with this phone.